Hello, and welcome to Connecting Hawaii Business on ThinkTech Hawaii. My name is Kathleen Lee, owner of Kathleen Lee Consulting, and I am your host for this program. We are currently live streamed on thinktechhawaii.com as well as on ThinkTech Hawaii social media accounts, Facebook, and YouTube. And viewers like you have the opportunity to ask us questions during the show by emailing them to questions@thinktechhawaii.com. Now we're on to the show, and I am excited to have our guest on today. We had him here about a year ago, and a lot has happened since then. Please welcome Keith Amemiya, Executive Director of the Central Pacific Bank Foundation. Hello, Keith.
Hi, Kathleen. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming back to the show. It's been a year, and we've on our end, the show is actually it was under a different name back then as well.
Yeah, it was. And
Business
a
in
lot
Hawaii. Yes.
that sounds familiar. But anyway, a lot has happened since then, and I'm just excited to be back on your show one more time.
Well, thank you for that. For people who were not tuned in with what was going on in the community in 2020, tell our viewers a bit about yourself and what you were up to last year.
Well, all of us were, of course, affected by the pandemic, and to a large extent, we still are. But it seems like there's light at the end of the tunnel, and so hopefully things will return as much as can be in terms of being back to normal by the end of the year. But as you and many other people know, I spent the bulk of last year as a candidate for the mayor of the city and county of Honolulu. Overall, it was a great experience. It was the first time I'd run for office. I announced my campaign in August of 2019. So I was campaigning for 15 months straight, and I was fortunate to advance out of a crowded field of 15 candidates. Many of them were experienced politicians in the mix. And so I felt very fortunate with the support of many, many people to advance to the general election. Came up a bit short, but overall, as I mentioned earlier, it was a great experience. It was very rewarding. I learned a lot, and I just can't thank my many supporters for all that they did for me during the campaign.
Let's talk about that, Keith. So you mentioned that you were in a field of individuals that were experienced, that had been in office for a while, and now Mayor Rick Blangiardi were the two that did not have political experience or background running for office. So what are some of the major lessons that you learned during that course of time or that whole experience?
Well, I learned that, people care about our community and that there's a lot of people who are willing to help the cause. As I mentioned, I was a first-time candidate, but there were many people who stepped up and helped volunteer from all walks of life, from older volunteers to younger volunteers. And what I'm really proud of and excited about in particular is that we were able to bring together people from all walks of life, especially younger people. There were a lot of volunteers from the high school level and even college who were interested in the campaign and shared the values and concerns that I have about the future and direction of Oahu, and were willing to take a chance on a first-time candidate. Because of the pandemic, it was a challenge to campaign. I mean, we really had to pivot and change course around this time last year when the pandemic was in full force. And I believe we were in pretty much a complete shutdown or lockdown where you couldn't leave your house basically unless you had a doctor's appointment or went to the grocery store or were going to pick up food. And so the traditional ways of campaigning, going door to door, having coffee hours in someone's living room, or even sign waving was disallowed. So we had to be creative. We had to utilize email, social media, and other means of getting the word and message out. It was quite a challenge, but it was difficult for all the candidates, and we did the best we could under the circumstances.
And we saw that play out too, which is wonderful. So what have you been up to since the elections? How's the family doing? I know they were out there as well campaigning with you, both Bonnie and Chris, I love seeing that. I love the whole family effort when it comes to, community type of activities, especially running for office, because it shows people that you've gotten like the approval and the support of the people who love you. So what have you been up to?
Well, we've all, well, we right after the general election, we took some time to rest and recover. It was a grueling campaign. Anyone who's been involved in a campaign know how taxing it is on you physically, mentally, and emotionally. So we took a bit of time to recover, but I'm glad you brought that up, that I had the full support of my wife, Bonnie, and our son, Christopher. Chris was, as we spoke about right before the show started, took the current year from college off because of the pandemic. His school in California, Claremont McKenna College, was shut down, and they were only offering online courses. And so he thought it was better, and we supported the decision that he wait till school resumes back to normal, so to speak, this coming fall. And so he spent the fall campaigning and working on my campaign in all aspects. It was a great experience for him. He was out there, Kathleen, as you and others saw, whether it's sign waving or canvassing or on TV commercials, as well as my wife, Bonnie, who I need to thank as well, because she was all in. Not all spouses of candidates participate to the extent she did, but she had her regular day job, and in between and before and after, she would participate in the campaign. And so one benefit of the campaign is it brought our family closer together. We spent a lot of time with each other day in and day out for months on end, and really got even closer and bonded, if you will, even more than we would if Chris was back in college and Bonnie and I were working regular jobs.
So let's go to the question that I mentioned earlier that has been asked of you. Are you thinking of getting involved again in politics in the future? And I laugh because I know it's a daunting question to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So
Oh, that's okay. I mean, you're not the only one that asks me that. I probably get asked that at least once a day. And my answer is, the most recent January election was not that long ago. It was about 5 months ago. And so I'm still, I don't know if you say recovering, but that didn't happen too long ago. So my point is that I haven't really thought about it. I'm open to the idea. I haven't totally ruled it out, but I want to spend a little more time to think about it, talk with my wife in particular about that, and see what other people in my inner circle feel about that prospect. But right now, I'm focused on my new job as the executive director of the Central Pacific Bank Foundation. And to me, I owe it to them to give 100% effort uh, towards the foundation and the bank in general. And I don't want to be distracted or sidelined by any talk about running for future political office at this time.
I appreciate that focus. And let's talk about that. What made you decide to want to lead the CPB Foundation? How did that even come about in your radar?
So, I, as I said, spent about a month or two after the January election, kind of recuperating, resting, and just reflecting on the campaign and what I want to do next. And the bulk of my career, as I said throughout the campaign, has been based on public service, community service, helping others. That's my passion. That's what I've done throughout my career. That's what I enjoy doing. And I was approached by the executive chairman of Central Pacific Bank, Paul Yonomini. I know Paul, and I knew his father and mother, particularly his dad, Wally Yonomini, who was a famous baseball player, football player, baseball manager back in Japan. He played running back for the 49ers here in the NFL for a season. So he was a rare, gifted athlete. And so Paul approached me and asked me if I would be interested in working for and running the CPB Foundation. And I jumped at the chance. I thought it was a great opportunity. It's a successful company that believes in giving back to the community. And it involves something that I'm passionate about. That's helping those in need and helping the community.
I think you touched upon that. So tell us a bit more about the foundation. Like, how did that come about, and who does it serve? I know you mentioned the community,
Mhm.
um, and well, I guess a brief history of it and what the mission of the foundation is.
Okay. Well, I do want to add that another attractive feature, if you will, about working for the CPB Foundation is the bank has undergone a tremendous transformation, a major renovation of the flagship building, the main branch, the main lobby area. Many of its branches are being renovated. There's a total rebranding. There's an upgrading of the technology throughout the bank. There's a heavy emphasis on utilizing mobile apps and online banking to make it as easy for CVB's customers as much as possible. So I'm coming in at an exciting time. In terms of what CPB Foundation's mission is, it's broad and far-reaching. It's just to help the community and help those in need. CPB feels strongly that uh, the bank and any other company is only as successful as the communities that it serves. And so we think it's a win-win proposition. We help the community and the bank benefits. And we also think that the bank, or feel that the bank is uh, done pretty well despite the pandemic, or done well despite the pandemic. And we have an obligation to give back to the community and help those in need. I mean, that's the hallmark of the bank since its founding in the 1950s. It's to provide a service and a need for those who need bank services or need a help in terms of bettering our communities.
I think that's wonderful. We are about to go on break, but I want to ask one more question before we do that. And it touches upon what you just said. So you came into the CPB Foundation at the beginning of the year. From your perspective, what were the challenges that the foundation ran into with the pandemic? And how are you folks dealing with that now?
I suppose the greatest challenge is there's so much need out there. The pandemic has affected our economy greatly, and it's affected communities and individual families. So there's only so many resources from our foundation and other foundations, and it's a matter of choosing which worthy cause, which needy cause to support at this time. And it's a tough decision as to who to help. So that's probably the greatest challenge at this time, is that there's so much need out there. But we're doing the best we can with what we have.
Great. We have, what did I mention earlier? We are about to go on break. But when we come back, we have two questions for you, Keith, from some of our viewers. So I will be asking that when Connecting Hawaii Business returns. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Connecting Hawaii Business on ThinkTech Hawaii. My name is Kathleen Lee, and our guest today is Keith Amemiya, Executive Director for the Central Pacific Bank Foundation. How do I stutter with the word bank? It's four letters. Anyway, um, it's great to have you on, and we were talking about updates for the foundation. I saw on the news that you folks donated about $1.5 million to help Hawaii communities. So could you tell us a bit more about that? And that was around the time that you came in as well.
Yes, so the foundation donated over $1.5 million throughout the community last year. And the focus last year and the focus this year was on pandemic related causes. And so some of the donations last year went to help fund the services at Wahiawa General Hospital. It also went to promote and support the Made in Hawaii Festival because hundreds of small locally owned businesses participate in the festival. We helped convert it to an online marketplace because, of course, due to COVID, you couldn't have the live exhibitions and demonstrations at the Blaisdell Exhibition Hall like in years past. And probably the most well-known initiative of the foundation last year was called Keep Hawaii Cooking, where the Central Bank CPB Foundation provided subsidies to people who bought restaurant food, takeout food from locally owned restaurants. And what we're happy about was that it not only lightened the checkbook of consumers, but it also helped local restaurants who were struggling at the time, as you can imagine, because they weren't allowed to have any in-person dining at the time. So in all, about $600,000 worth of business went towards our local restaurants during the promotion, and we were really pleased with the great success that that program had. Looking ahead to this year, since I jumped on board with the support of the CPB Foundation, led by Executive Chairman Paul Yonamini and President Catherine No, we gave $100,000 to the Salvation Army to help fund its addiction treatment services facility in Nuuanu. Like a lot of nonprofits, the Salvation Army has received less donations because of the pandemic. So we were happy to keep that facility up and running during these difficult times. We also donated about a month ago $30,000 towards the Coconut Coalition for the renovation of the Cocoa Crater Stairs project. Several hundred thousand people a year utilize those stairs for recreation and general exercise. And so we were happy to help that hardworking, very productive nonprofit. And then more recently, we've earmarked $100,000 to support public high school athletic programs across the state so that they can conduct spring season sports events or games, whether it's baseball, softball, and several other spring sports. High school athletics was on hold for a year. They've suffered from the pandemic financially, and so we were excited to be able to help them, along with many other people, ranging from Marcus Mariota, Shane Victorino, the Wali Onomine Foundation, DeForest Buckner, and the Freeman Foundation. We've all pooled our resources to make sure that thousands of public school student athletes can compete in athletics this spring.
I appreciate that. I can tell the passion in your voice when it comes to talking about how what you're doing right now is helping out the community. So this ties into the question that we received from one of our viewers. And I feel like what you said kind of answers it already, but let's go over it. Are there opportunities for the Central Pacific Bank Foundation to partner with other nonprofit organizations? And if so, what types of initiatives or projects would the foundation support?
Well, as I mentioned, our mission and our goal is pretty broad and as far reaching as we possibly can be. And so anything that will help the community, help the needy in particular, we will seriously look into. So one example I just mentioned is combining with other foundations and other notable individuals in our state to help fund high school sports in our public schools for this spring. Another initiative is CPB's foundation, along with several other nonprofits, have donated even more money than we normally do to the Hawaii Food Bank this year and even last year, because there was a huge issue with families whose parents are out of work. Sometimes both the mom and dad have been out of work, and money was very short and food was in short supply. So we were committed to making sure that no one goes hungry during this pandemic. And so, we can only take so much credit as our foundation because many other foundations stepped up as well. But we were glad to do our part in terms of supporting the food bank.
I think that's wonderful. Yeah, and I feel like the second question that we got kind of veers away from that, but since this is a program available to the public, let's go ahead and ask it anyway. Do you think the controversy of the state auditor will affect how Hawaii government runs their finances?
I don't know all the ins and outs of that issue, but my hope is that the work of the auditor is productive and that it makes government work better and more efficiently. And so, I mean, that's pretty much all I can say is that the point of an auditor is to provide an adequate measure of a check and balance to make sure that government is working efficiently. And if all works as it should, it will make government more efficient and more productive. And so my hope is that the work of the auditor actually improves government. It helps reduce expenses. It helps create more efficiency so that the taxpayer dollar is stretched even further, especially in these difficult economic times.
Thank you, Keith. And to the individual or the public who asked that question, we hope that answers that. And on that note, is there anything about the foundation or yourself that we have not covered that you want to share with our viewers today?
Well, I would just add in terms of the foundation, I've said it several times, but it bears repeating that we're committed to making our communities better, especially in these times of difficulty for many people. And so we will continue to try to be a productive partner with other nonprofits, with government, with the school system to help in every way we can. And so I mentioned earlier, I feel fortunate to work for the CPB Foundation. It's done a lot of good work well before I came on board, and I hope to just continue that legacy of helping the communities as it's done for the past several decades.
What are some parts of the position that you've enjoyed so far since you've been in it for a few months in the job now?
Yeah, well, it's just helping people, helping various organizations and individuals throughout the community. I really feel honored and privileged to be able to do so. It's not my personal resources; it's the resources of the bank, and I feel an obligation to be a capable steward and manager of those funds, and it's just enjoyable to. Be a part of giving back to the community in this time of need.
Awesome. Final thoughts, Keith, before we wrap the show up. And we thank you again for joining us today.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you, Kathleen, for this opportunity. A lot has happened in the last year, as you've mentioned, but you know, by and large, it's been a great experience, a great journey for myself this past year, and I'm in a good place. I have a good opportunity to work with a good company, a good organization, and I hope to do what I can to keep making our communities better and better. This is a difficult time, but I truly believe that the people of Hawaii, when all is said and done, when times are tough, we band together, we work together, and we make the best of a difficult situation. We help each other out. And I truly believe that if we continue to work together and stay together, we can come out of this pandemic stronger and better than ever. We can be more efficient. We can be more innovative. We can be more creative and just create a better Hawaii for everybody, especially our younger generations, because that's what it's all about.
Thank you, Keith. And for our viewers out there, you have been watching Connecting Hawaii Business on ThinkTech Hawaii. We had Keith Amemiya on the show, Executive Director for the Central Pacific Bank Foundation. We'd like to thank Jay Fidel and the entire staff at ThinkTech Hawaii for making our show possible. We had Haley helping us out today. We will see you again in the next 2 weeks. Aloha.